I never thought a marriage could fall apart quietly. You expect shouting, slammed doors, someone storming out with keys dangling in their hand. But mine didn't collapse like that. It eroded slowly, softly, like water wearing down stone, until one morning I woke up and realized there wasn't anything left to hold. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 37. And until recently, I believed my wife Lauren still loved me the way she used to, warm, tender, with small gestures that didn't need explaining. But love changes when communication becomes a negotiation, when honesty feels optional, and when a simple question turns into a battlefield. It started subtly. I'd ask where she was heading after work, and she'd give vague answers. Just out with friends, nowhere important. First, I told myself I was overthinking it. Everyone deserves space. Everybody needs air. I didn't want to be the controlling husband who demanded details about every movement. But what I experienced wasn't space. It was distance, a distance she protected. 3 nights earlier, she'd come home past midnight. No call, no text, nothing. She smelled like a citrus perfume I didn't recognize. When I asked if everything was okay, she rolled her eyes and said, "Ethan, I'm not doing this. You don't need to know where I am every second. I'm an adult." It was the first time she'd spoken to me like a stranger. And strangers don't owe you explanations. But the truth is, I didn't want explanations. I just wanted honesty, the same kind we used to share without even trying. The message that changed everything came on a quiet Thursday evening. I'd finished work earlier than usual and decided to stop by a little Italian place downtown called Bella Vista, a spot we used to love before life got complicated. She had told me that morning she'd be meeting a friend for dinner. Someone from her office named Alex. I didn't question it. I just told her to have a good time. As I stepped inside the restaurant, the soft hum of conversation wrapped around me. Candles flickered on small wooden tables. For a second, I felt strangely nostalgic, like I walked into a memory instead of a restaurant. Then I froze. Across the room, near the back window, sat Lauren. Not with Alex. Not with any coworker. She was leaning in, smiling, really smiling, the way she hadn't smiled at me in months. Across from her sat a man I'd never seen before, his hand casually close to hers on the table. The kind of comfortable closeness that isn't accidental. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was numbness, hollow cold, like someone had quietly removed all the air from the room. I didn't approach her. I didn't storm over. I didn't demand anything. Instead, I sat down at the table directly behind hers, back to back, close enough to hear her laugh, far enough that she wouldn't notice me. Part of me didn't even understand why I did it. I think I just wanted to know the truth without her rehearsed explanations. A few minutes later, she picked up her phone. I watched her shoulders rise as she typed. Fast, irritated, dismissive. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Lauren. "I don't have to tell you where I am." She didn't know I was there. She didn't know I could see the exact shape of the lie she felt comfortable sending. I stared at the message for a long second. Then I lifted my eyes and looked at the back of her head. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, the same way she wore it on casual days. She looked at ease, unburdened, like all the heaviness she'd been giving me, she wasn't carrying anymore. She had simply handed it to me, piece by piece. My fingers hovered over my phone screen. I didn't want to send something angry. I didn't want to accuse or expose or embarrass her. I wanted something that mirrored her clarity. So I typed one line and hit send. "Lauren, turn around." She stiffened instantly. Her shoulders pulled in. Her spine straightened. And then, hesitantly, almost fearfully, she began to turn her head. In that moment, I didn't know what would break first. Her lie, our marriage, or the person I had been trying so hard to be for her. Her eyes met mine for the first time in what felt like forever. They were wide, startled, flickering with recognition and something else I couldn't immediately name. Guilt, perhaps, or the sharp awareness of being caught. I stayed silent. My voice, if I had used it, would have shattered everything. Instead, I let the stillness speak. The restaurant hummed around us, oblivious, people chatting, silverware clinking. For a moment, the world shrank to just us, back to back, and the invisible thread between my chest and hers. Then she spoke, her voice low and careful. "Ethan." I cut her off with a small shake of my head. No words were needed. Not yet. I let her feel the weight of my presence. The calm that had replaced the anxious panic I once carried for her moods, Her silences, her sudden disappearances. I had learned something in the last few months. When love erodes quietly, confrontation doesn't fix it. Clarity does. And I had found mine. I stood up slowly and walked around the table. She flinched slightly, her hand tightening on the edge of the table. The man across from her, the one she smiled at so freely, looked up, startled, unsure. I said nothing. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I didn't even glance at him. I only looked at her. And in that gaze, I laid out the truth without speaking. I saw everything. I understood everything. And I no longer belonged to a story where I was invisible. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, forming words she didn't dare say. I interrupted again, this time silently. A slow exhale, a small nod, a shift in posture. She understood. She knew she had no control here. Not over me. Not over the calm that had replaced months of fear, confusion, and hurt. I walked past her and toward the exit. Outside, the night air was crisp, sharp, alive. The city lights of downtown Denver blurred slightly, reflecting the mix of adrenaline and liberation in my chest. I didn't run. I didn't slam a door. I simply walked, feet steady, heart steadier. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was carrying her absence like a stone in my chest. I was empty, yes, but in the kind of way that makes room for clarity, for strength, for life unshackled. Later messages came. Short, clipped, pleading, defensive. She tried to explain herself, offered excuses, fragments of her side, reasons why she hadn't told me. But the truth had already happened. I had already found the peace that only comes after accepting that someone has stopped valuing you in the way you need to be valued. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I was angry, but because I had finally understood a principle I'd been too loyal to accept. You cannot force respect, affection, or honesty from someone who has chosen not to give it. In the following days, I pieced together the quiet unraveling. Late dinners, unexplained absences, whispered phone calls, sudden commitments that never included me. It wasn't dramatic. There was no betrayal in the cinematic sense, no public humiliation, just a slow, almost imperceptible drift. And it had been happening for years. I had been clinging to fragments while she moved on, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps with intention. I called my closest friend Sarah, the one who had witnessed our early wedding days in Seattle. She didn't ask questions. She only listened. When I finished recounting everything, she said softly, almost matter-of-factly, "Ethan, you're free now. You just didn't realize it." And she was right. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the form of a truth you can no longer ignore. That night I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. The silence wasn't heavy. It wasn't oppressive. It was clean, empty, but not hollow. I allowed myself to imagine life differently. Not chaotic, not desperate, not tethered to someone who no longer needed me. I allowed myself the possibility of mornings with coffee on my balcony, evenings laughing with friends, spontaneous trips without permission, and most importantly, the right to feel seen and wanted. Weeks passed. I avoided the temptation to check on her, to see if she noticed my absence, to measure her reaction. And as expected, she didn't. Not because she didn't care, but because our story had reached its final chapter. Quietly, almost politely. Eventually, I heard from Lauren again via short text. "We need to talk." I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I didn't beg. I simply typed back 3 words that carried years of clarity, pain, and resolve. I already have. Because I had seen her. I had acknowledged the truth. And now I only had to live it. In that moment, I realized something profound. Leaving isn't always about anger. It's not always about revenge. It's about reclaiming the part of yourself that's been quietly surrendered piece by piece. It's about walking into the night with steady feet, knowing that you are finally whole enough to be unseen, yet unshakably alive. And as I walked through the city streets, the distant hum of life around me, I felt the strange but beautiful weightlessness of closure. The kind that doesn't need fireworks, doesn't need a scene, doesn't need permission. Just is.